Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another quick edition of the Wandering Ukie Cheese Cafe. I'm coming to you now with one head of cabbage, just in case you're wondering what I'm going to do with it. At first I was thinking of maybe just tossing it around, maybe throwing it at someone to see what happens and what kind of reaction I would get. I have a feeling that someone's going to want to chase me around with either a pitchfork or a 2x4 with a nail in it. And I don't want to encourage any violent type actions. I'm a peaceful guy. So I went for my plan B instead with all this. I'm going to be doing a little sauerkraut recipe. So if you've ever been to like German style restaurants, or if you've had sausages, Oktoberfest, what have you, you've probably had this before, either on its own with a fork or put into a sandwich with a sausage too. So it's really tasty, and there's a lot of recipes you're going to find all around the net and in books. But I'm going to actually show you a very basic way of doing it, which actually takes like minimal effort as well. The only thing you got to worry about is make sure it doesn't go bad during the fermentation process. So let's get started. So what you're probably going to need is a cutting board and one slicing knife while you're working with this cabbage. Plus, one key thing to remember too is try to work with clean hands as much as possible and have all your equipment clean too. And above all else, do not wash your cabbage. I know, that seems to go counterintuitive to what they always tell you to do with cooking, but this is one case where you don't wash your vegetables here, because actually the bacteria that's in this cabbage is the natural fermentation ingredient that's going to make it all softened up. So they would usually recommend using like a medium-sized cabbage, but what I'm doing is I'm taking a slightly large cabbage, and I'm just going to use half of this as a test. One, I want to make sure this all fits in one jar, and two, I've had a couple of bad attempts at making this in the past that didn't really work well, so I don't want to be disappointed and lose it all at once. So I'm getting rid of the core now. Just don't have to get too much of it, just want to make sure that the stem is removed. There. And then what you want to do is you're going to need to have a bowl right beside you, like a large mixing bowl. And then this you're going to start cutting up into very thin slices like this. All right, let's make sure I can see that on camera here. So just like that. And you keep doing that until, well, basically you're done with whatever you're working with of your cabbage. And then after you're done with that, you throw it all into the bowl. And then you're really only going to need one more ingredient if you've done this right. I know, it's crazy to think. You would think that there's a lot more to fermenting cabbage to make it into sauerkraut. And like I said, there are a lot of recipes out there that say you could use like wine, you could use some vinegar with water, you can use possibly some beer. Like you could use anything to ferment anything, I suppose. But this one is actually basic. As long as you have this next ingredient in your pantry, you're fine. And if you don't have that ingredient, well, what the hell are you doing with all your cooking then? You kind of need this for flavor. Almost there. Okay, we're done. So next thing I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm just going to get it all into the bowl. But make sure it's all in little slices too. And if you have any big pieces like this, then you can just take your knife again, slice them all up, and then you're good. Nice and simple here. Keep doing that until everything is in the bowl. Okay, next, now that all the cabbage is in here, your next ingredient is the key one to make this all work. And once again, like I said, if you don't have this in your pantry, I would be very surprised. What you basically need is salt. I know, right? Cabbage, salt, it liquefies. But there is a reason to that. You need to add some salt. Like one recipe I found says you could add like 1 to 3 tablespoons of what they call real salt, as opposed to artificial manufactured salt. I mean, isn't all this stuff manufactured to begin with? So here's what you do. I'm going to start with like I'll do 1.5 tablespoons of salt. Then once you have it all sprinkled in, you basically have to play with it. Yep. And there's a reason for it too. Because what you do is you're going to be massaging this, and then the salt that's in the cabbage is actually going to be drawing the liquid out of the vegetable directly. So then this thing is going to moisten up, it's going to soften, and it's even going to have its own juices manufactured. Well, here I'm using that word again, but it's basically gonna draw out the liquid to help ferment it. That's actually what you do with it. You don't need anything else maybe, but we'll get to that in a second. So keep doing this, and you will know that if it's working if it gets a bit more compressed, and you'll see there is going to be some liquid on the bottom too. Keep doing that for like minimum 10 minutes, and then you can transfer it. This is going to be fun. This is like trying to make bread, but the old-fashioned way. No bread maker, no food processor, you just mix everything up, and you knead it by hand for like who knows how many hours. That was definitely a labor of love. And I'm Ukrainian too, so I know what I'm talking about. Traditionally for Easter, they would make a raisin bread that they call pascha. And the way that I remember my grandparents had done it, and even my mom years ago, used to do it that way, kneading it for hours on end. I'm sure it was tasty, but sometimes convenience trumps that. The exception is with pierogies. Yep, thanks for reminding me, YouTube. But if you want to see me make pierogies again, you can watch that. That's one thing that, no matter what, is still best to do from scratch from start to finish. Some stuff you could probably replace, store-bought maybe too, but if your only experience with pierogies is store-bought, you really haven't had them before. Okay, I'll just rip this one out. So yeah, I'm starting to notice that in the bowl it's actually flattening up, and it's actually feeling a little bit more wet and compressing. I have a feeling there's more juices in here. So I'm gonna keep going with this, then I'll get to my next step right after this. Okay, yeah, I think it's been at least a good 10 minutes I've been kneading this, and it's probably hard to see on camera because of the angle here, but basically, when I was putting this in, the cabbage was all like close to the rim of the bowl, and now it's all pressed and it's like only taking up half the space, so you can really see the difference. And take note of the liquid that's kind of spewing from it. So once you're done with that, next thing you would need to do is grab a mason jar so that you'd be able to store it. And again, you're going to want to keep this clean too, because you don't want any other bacteria in here. Just the bacteria and the natural agents when you're doing this. So my suggestion then would be to make sure it's clean before using this. Just throw some boiling water in here, and then that should get rid of it all. And keep it aside and possibly wear gloves because it is hot afterwards. You don't want to burn yourself on this, all for the sake of good food. So you're basically going to be taking all of your cabbage and then putting it into the jar. But, you know, it looks like it's doing good progress. We're not all the way there yet. There is a little bit of extra work to do with this. Yeah, because you need to get a lot more juices out of it. You'll notice there's still plenty of juice. Pretty decent sized cabbage too. I think I'm gonna get it all the way to the rim or the top of this jar, which is pretty awesome. I'll take that. Alright. I guess what you could start doing then is that you're gonna want to have this to take up much less space in here. So what you would do is you could take something like, I don't know, a wooden spoon, and then just use that to start packing it down into the cabbage. Oh, I think I forgot one more step actually. I should have taken like a few leaves of this to put right on top, because with that, then that actually gives me some leverage to work with. But I think I could just get away with taking one leaf off of this. I think I'm going to use this for the other batch of sauerkraut after. I'm confident enough that this is going to work. Alright. One leaf removed, not the end of the world. Yeah. I'll keep that aside until I'm all done. Then just keep putting the rest of this cabbage in. Almost there. And I'll explain the leverage thing once I'm done with this. That's all the cabbage, so see if I can get this on camera too. Just some remaining liquid that I want to get into the jar. There we are. Getting close. Alright. Now that you have all your cabbage in, you can put in the other leaf of cabbage. Just like press it on top this way. There. So the other ones that are all like pieced together, that it's going to be hard to kind of mush it in. So your leverage part of this is that you take the solid piece that hasn't been fermenting in salt yet and just use that to pack it down. And you're going to want to keep doing this for a little bit. Start packing it down a bit, then wait another hour or so, or wait a couple of minutes. You really should just play it by ear, because here's what you want to be on the lookout for. Notice too when I'm packing this that there's actually some liquid movement in here. That shows that it's still drawing liquid from the cabbage. You basically want to have all of this completely submerged in water. That way it gives it some protection and it's still going to be able to ferment on its own. Any cabbage that's going to be left exposed at the top without any liquid to cover it up means it's probably going to get some mold down the road. And believe me, I've had that happen before. It could be like, not enough coverage in here. Perhaps you have a really humid house that encourages mold growth, or somewhere old and bad circulation. You name it. It's a multitude of reasons. That was actually the reason that this was a failure for me in the past. So keep packing it down. And again, you really just want to make sure that everything is covered in liquid. If you're not sure you're going to be able to get it all into liquid, then you could add like maybe a tablespoon or so of water or possibly vinegar. And then that would be fine. Keep going like that. Yeah, I actually got a pretty decent amount out of this. Maybe another trick I learned, or I'm just realizing now, I didn't put enough salt in here in the past. This is a tablespoon and a half. I feel like the more salt I have, the more liquid is going to be drawn out. Well, live and learn. Okay, we'll just keep packing this in. Very nice. You can notice the difference on this thing now too. Get a load of this. So much liquid has just come from this, all because I've added all that salt to the cabbage and kneaded it. It's drawn it out. It's really starting to press firmly enough. So it's all just about submerged into this. And again, if you really aren't getting enough liquid, then you could add some water here to just get it in there. Because the idea, again, is that to protect this, to make it ferment properly, you need full coverage of liquid in here. Then once you're done, there's many options for what you could do to let it sit. I mean, one of them you could do is, I've seen that you could use an actual lid for that. What I was told to do is, you actually don't give it an air seal. You just get yourself some cheesecloth. You can get this really cheap in most stores too. So what this is going to do is it'll let air still circulate in here so that you're able to let it ferment with the agents in the air and all the bacteria that's in the cabbage. So just cut a little bit like this. That's done. And let me just make sure this thing is all pressed still. And then once you're confident enough that everything is going to be covered in liquid or submerged in liquid, take your cloth, put it on the top of the jar, and then put yourself some elastic so that this thing is sealed tightly. But again, it's still going to get some airflow in here. And then you can keep this aside for however long you feel like it's needed. I've heard that you could put this aside for 2 weeks, and then as it keeps aging, it's going to develop a nice flavor. Other ones, I don't know. This could be kind of risky sometimes. I'm just hoping that in this case that the batch I put together is going to be successful enough. I'm not going to show this from a start to finish today because, I got some other stuff I want to take care of. But later on, once I record another episode, excuse me, then I'm going to be able to show you the final result. Or success if this thing goes all moldy on me. Don't do this to me, brother. So thanks for watching again, everyone. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button below, give this video a thumbs up, and above all else, keep spreading my cheese, bad jokes, cooking, hobbies, and my knowledge. See you around.